Welcome to Building Innovation, the podcast, convening experts to discuss issues and solutions.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Building Innovation, the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to present to you a panel of experts in the building industry field, and I'd like to welcome them to the podcast to talk on the topic of AI in building sciences. And our first guest is Kimon Onuma, and who's also joined by Roger Grant and Jay Kline. So for each of you, we'll start with you, Kimon. Tell us who you are, what you do, and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Kimon Onuma, Onuma Inc. I'm an architect, and we develop also apps for BIM and digital twins, and we've been using BIM since the early 90s, so it's 30 years now. And we work with NIBS quite a bit with Jay and Roger, actually, on a lot of interesting projects.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us today. Roger?
Thanks, Johnny. And I'm Roger Grant. I'm the Vice President of Building Technology at NIBS. And in that role, I deal with all of our technology-related initiatives that involves projects that we do for federal agencies and with federal agencies. As Kimon mentioned, we've worked together on a number of those different efforts, and also work with our public-facing councils and programs that are advancing technology for the built environment and standards and shared practices and procedures. So this is a perfect topic to build on our work.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining today. And Jay?
Yeah, Jay Kline, National Institute of Building Sciences. Speaking of those programs that Roger's mentioning, that's my role primarily at NIBS. Is I'm a program manager for supporting strategy, implementation, and just overall maturity of the use of BIM, primarily right now for Department of State's Bureau of Overseas Buildings Operations, which builds and operates all of our nation's non-military installations overseas. So I lead our staff of BIM managers, data analysts, and librarians there, and also our programming and development team there. So I have a couple other hats at NIBS, but that's the primary thing that I do.
Absolutely. Everybody at NIBS, we all have a lot of hats, right? So much, there's a lot going on. Man, I'm excited about this topic because there's so much interest in AI. We do have a very broad audience. NIBS does, and we, in all of our sessions, anytime we use an acronym, we want to make sure folks know what we're talking about. And there are maybe some people that really don't even know what AI is, and maybe they've just heard marketing terms or seen commercials. But Jay, can you tell us, from a layman's perspective, what AI is?
Yeah, so at the risk of oversimplifying it, we'll give this a shot. So imagine you have a really smart toy robot, right? And you can ask it questions, and it has the ability to answer those questions in whatever way works best for you, depending on what you ask it and how you ask it to return the answer, right? So it can answer very broad or specific type of questions, but the question is then, how does it know all this stuff and how to reason with how to provide the answer back to you? And the way it does that is through examples. Just like we learn by studying or practicing, the robot learns from lots and lots of examples. So for example, if you were to show it 1,000 pictures of cats, it would start to recognize that cats are things that have pointy ears and whiskers and a small nose versus a big nose, right? And it would start to learn these things so that you could one day show it a picture of a cat and say, is this a cat? And it would know that, yes, that is indeed a cat, and tell you so. But if you showed a picture of a dog, it would say, I'm not sure what that is, but it's not a cat, right?
Yeah.
So it gets better over time by teaching it with more examples. And, in a sense, we think about, in BIM, we do a lot of data work, right? And a lot of applications and development is relational databases. So creating relationships between data points. we have to do that manually often and tell it that, we're calling a chair and not a stool. AI is where we're telling it how to learn those relationships, and it can create those relationships for you. So it cuts out that step.
That's an interesting example. I guess to relate it to those from the educational community, there's a learning theory, a constructivist learning theory, which says that knowledge is built by continuing to construct upon previous knowledge. And so that's a great explanation, Jay, because it kind of follows that same pattern that the computer is just continuing to build upon the information and the examples that's been given to it. That's fantastic. So, Roger, let me pull you in here from a NIBS leadership perspective. It may be an obvious question, but why is this important, and why is NIBS involved in it?
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. And NIBS is set up to help the public and private sector use building sciences to improve the built environment. And in order to do that, we really need to be taking advantage of the best and the latest technology to support that effort. Our world is increasingly digitized, and we're working to try to leverage the ability to use digital representations of physical objects to improve their performance, to minimize their negative impacts and maximize their positive impacts on the world we all live in. So artificial intelligence and all the related ways it can it gets used in technology is an important new tool for us to take advantage of, work with, and figure out how we can use it to apply science to improve the built environment. So that that's why ultimately we are trying to use technology to solve these bigger problems. How do we make the buildings we live and work in perform better, use less energy, reduce embodied carbon, be safe and secure for the occupants, survive natural disasters, which we're dealing with too frequently these days. So, this is a way to help us get to that bigger goal that NIBS is really at the center of trying to help our country and improve overall performance of the built environment.
Yeah, well said. Let me pull in Kimon here. Kimon, from an industry perspective, and with all of your experience, and I know you're on the cutting edge of some of these things. What advances are you seeing that apply to the built environment specifically?
Oh, I think there's a ton of potential. Obviously, it's still just the very beginning. And if we use the comment that you made earlier that we're wearing a lot of different hats, I see AI as just being another hat, another person that's going to help us. And to Jay's point about teaching AI and looking at the wealth of knowledge that NIBS has and the building industry has, the exciting thing is to be able to take that knowledge that's been accumulated over the years and start feeding it into tools, AI and humans and the other tools that we use. That part's exciting to me because of the complexity of the building industry. It's too difficult to manage it all manually. And the other thing is that AI has actually been around a long time. It's getting a lot of press in the last year because of all the easier to use tools, Chat and Midjourney and Dolly and everything else. But it's been around us for a very long time. In fact, every one of our smartphones is tied to AI systems that help us navigate and find and shop and all that. So if we take that technology that's already there and take the existing knowledge base that's already in the building industry and take the strength of NIBS of being connected to the building industry, to many different owners, like the State Department, like Jay mentioned, that we're working with, and take that complexity and start connecting the dots, the relational links that we mentioned earlier. The building industry is full of relational links, and the building industry and the standards that are being developed through NIBS define those relational links through standards, right? If those are in place, we're not just asking AI just random questions. We're actually pointing it to a knowledge base, pointing it to a specific use case, which we're very good at from domain expertise perspective. We know how to describe the problem. That's our job, right, as architects, engineers, and builders, to be able to construct and operate. And bringing that all together, it's really exciting. And looking at other tangent industries too that are using AI, they're able to start automating those processes. If you have a business rule, for example, and you could capture that business logic, if you do A, B, and C, if you're Amazon, if you have somebody that's shopping for a package, we need to deliver it on time. There's a rule set there that then can be driven into what happens if there's a disruption in air traffic or whatever that slows down our packages. The same thing with the building industry. If we have that knowledge base in a structured, even semi-structured way, you can start using AI to give us insights and value. And I think the experimentation that we've been doing for the last year plus, actually it's gone before that, even with a lot of machine learning and algorithms and whatever, but there's so much potential there, but it's still the very beginning. We're still experimenting, but it's moving very quickly. It's an opportunity. I think that's what we're seeing in the industry.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I want to toss the same question over to Jay here. What are some of the advances that you're seeing? You know, I know you've been looking at this topic, and I know there's a lot out there. But what are you seeing that really applies to the built industry?
Well, I think maybe to build on something Kimon said, you know, this has been around really for a while, and used in other industries. So why not construction? You know, I wonder what's the difference here. And I think, not to downplay other industries, but I think we have a unique challenge in that everything we do has to relate back to the physical world. You know, we're not giving people an app to navigate on their phone to get somewhere, or to purchase something, or look at the latest rebar to buy for their site, you know, on their phone. So everything that we're doing somehow translates into the physical world in a very massive way. I mean, structures and buildings are the things that encapsulate everything we do. And using AI to create structures is going to be an exciting and incredible journey, I think. You know, how do we get to the point where one day we're printing buildings using AI, or printing portions of buildings maybe, or robots putting in all the drywall for a project? You know, like image recognition, all these other base layers of technology paired with AI, I think is going to be really exciting. And we're starting to see glimpses of that. You know, there's painters, robots that can look at a set of drywall, see the corners, and paint only the ceiling, right? And maybe it takes someone to go finish the seams, but there's interesting robotics that are coming out, you know, as we speak and as we are talking here today.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of my days of construction. I'm pretty sure they wish that they had a painter, a robot, for some of the things I painted. I'm sure. Roger, let me toss the same question to you, as from your perspective. What are some of the things you're seeing that applies to the built environment?
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. What I'm really, I think, most excited about or interested in is the opportunity that, you know, harnessing AI in the building industry presents for us to help do the things that we can do better with more iterations being used. You know, if you're going to design something, you can work to optimize it to an extent, but time becomes a factor. And what we can do with the machine is point it at a problem, and it can process things much more quickly and much more and do it many times over. It still needs the guidance of, you know, the engineer, the architect, the constructor to make it work, but having the machine help us is where I think there's a lot of real opportunity to, you know, extend the things that we need to do, and then get at solving those big problems that we have in our industry around waste and energy utilization, carbon, you know, the things we really need to deal with. And that's where I see the interesting applications. I mean, there's a lot of potential, but those are the ones that excite me the most.
Yeah, as you were talking, Roger, I mean, you just reminded me, and we've talked a lot about this with with our U.S. National BIM program. Is one of the drivers for it is this anticipated reduction in the workforce. We're looking at a potential of estimated 41% of our workforce is estimated to retire by 2031, right? Which is really just around the corner. And so, sometimes when I hear things about AI, people are concerned about, that it's going to put some people out of work, but in reality, for the construction industry, we're really facing a crisis. So I really like your point about it helping us build buildings and helping us build them better, helping us be more efficient, because we do have a workforce crisis. So maybe that'll help dispel some of the concerns that folks have about what AI is coming for my job. I think when we look at it, there's plenty of work to do, and being, as you say, being able to harness that technology, is really important. It's a great use of AI.
Yeah, and I think the other kind of commenting on that point, Johnny, is that this has happened before. We have technology that comes along, and we have to figure out how to use it in the best way and take advantage of what it can do for us. And this is where we are today with the opportunity to do that with AI, and like Jay mentioned, robotics, the way we can put different technologies together is also a really interesting opportunity to solve the shortages or waste or performance improvements we want to need to address.
Yeah, and I guess to that point, Jay, in many of your activities of researching these things and implementing them, from that perspective, and as a team leader, and also with personnel that you're going to have to be preparing to implement these things. How do you see translating? I mean, this super exciting technology, cutting edge technology. Ultimately, that begins to has to be translated over into day-to-day work and project execution. So, can you talk a little bit about how you see making that transition?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of when I started teaching BIM modeling to a small engineering firm, and getting a little bit of flashbacks on that, right? So thinking through, how do we implement any new process or technology or standard for that matter, right? I think it's through leadership first, and focusing on behavior and habits, because daily implementation, daily practice is really just habits aimed at in a different way. So, we implement something new by leading through educating, reiterating, and then validating. And we may sometimes think of that as I do it and show you how, we do it together, and then you do it, right? And in educating, we're reminding teams of the tools they have at their disposal, I think in this case. And we lead by educating, by doing the research ourselves and finding those tools for our teams. So I think having a passion for learning, having a passion for the technology and the opportunities out there can lead you to find things that you can share with your team then and educate them on that. Then reiterating, you're selling the value, right? Here's how it can help you. Look what I use this for myself. Let me help you get started. Look at what maybe Roger has done, someone else on the team. Use their examples as small wins, celebrate changes in behavior as people are starting to implement something new. And then validate is, I guess, can you show me your work? Show me the math, show me how you did that. So you're helping to see, are they using it? Is it helping their workflow, and how to pivot from there?
No, I mean, that's a great point. Like any change we implement, right? We need to measure it on the back end. I think too many times organizations are a little guilty of implementing a change, but not really measuring the impact of it. So I like really how you brought that out, that it's, you need that validation on the back end after you've implemented something to make sure that it's achieving what you want. All right, so this is a very interesting conversation, and we've talked about some opportunities. You guys can certainly continue to sprinkle in some opportunities in your responses here, but I also want to just talk about some of the challenges that we have with this. And there certainly has been some concerns about the guardrails and that really need to be in place for AI. So, when we talk about opportunities, we also should be mindful of some of the challenges that we might face. So what are some of the things that you guys are seeing? And maybe I'll kick this back over to Kimon in some of the challenges with how fast that AI is advancing. And what do you think?
Yeah, so there's a couple challenges. Some of the most immediate ones we've heard of a lot in the news are the hallucinations, that AI can give us the wrong answers, right? But my response to that would be, even I hallucinate sometimes. I make mistakes, or our engineers or architects or partners or owners also hallucinate. But AI can help kind of filter it down, especially if we guide the conversation, like Jay mentioned. So if we give it the right information and we train it in the right way, it can go that way. The other challenge, which Jay touched on as well too, is the complexity of the building industry. But it's actually an opportunity, because with AI, and I really think this is kind of a turning point, because with digital twins, for example, a big part of digital twins are AI and machine learning that have been used for a long time in aerospace and manufacturing. And now that AI is becoming easier to implement, it means we can implement it into the building industry, especially if we, and this is a digital twin concept, if we decouple or decompose the complexity into distinct pieces that can then be used to have that conversation with. So in other words, we have to guide the conversation. If we don't guide it, the risk is that it'll just go all over the place. And that's why we decided to jump in very early. From a technology perspective, we have to be proactive. We can't say, well, it's not quite there yet, so we can't use it yet. There's a danger of it being underutilized or utilized in the wrong way. We don't know where it's going yet, but if we're not part of that conversation, then it will definitely go in the wrong direction. And that's part of the opportunity too, I think. So the complexity can be broken down, and AI, you can ask it questions on very complex data. It could filter back the information you need, as long as you know how to validate and audit it. Say, okay, where did you get that answer? And if you can trace it back, then it becomes easier to validate.
Yeah, very good. And you also mentioned some solutions in there as well. Like, is one having the conversations, bringing the folks together, to not be afraid of it, but have the conversation, help guide it. Excellent perspective. Roger, anything you want to add on the opportunities, challenges, or solutions front?
Yeah, we're obviously, this is something we're trying to figure out how to utilize. And of course, you're concerned about the risks associated with it. But the other thing to keep in mind is the risk of not doing it, because we have a lot, as I've said a couple times, I think we have a lot of big problems to solve, and we're not necessarily doing the best job in figuring out how to optimize the utilization of materials in buildings and reduce waste and reduce energy consumption. And I think there are things that we can improve upon, and we of course have to have in mind, we don't want to turn the creative process and the thought process over to the machine, but we want to use it to improve upon and leverage the things that we're doing, but we could do better if we were able to go across a problem many, many more times and get a better solution. So, I think it's easy to think about what the risks are, what it can do to harm you, but it's more important, I think, to be cognizant of the risks of not taking advantage of this, of which we have plenty.
And Jay, you want to jump in? Any additional opportunities, challenges, or solutions you want to highlight?
Yeah, so I'll pick up on Roger's risk of not implementing things. I think of a circus, and if you don't have the lion tamer there things could go very badly. So we need new skills in this industry, and that I think is one of the challenges and risks of not bringing in the right skills to really make the progress that we need to and train AI in the right way. I mean, there's probably very few of us right now that are thinking we need to hire a model trainer, but how soon is that going to come down the pipeline? Probably as soon as we want to implement AI, right? So, especially if you're a large owner and you have a large data set that you need a model to be trained on, you need that skill set. So I think skills is a big challenge that we'll see coming. So if you're out there and you like AI, there's a place for you in the construction industry, no matter how young or old or new you are probably to it. With AI itself, the capacity to do research and learn about what you can do in the industry and where you might fit is tenfold what it used to be. So use AI to figure out what can be done and then learn how to train models, and you will have an immediate place, I think, in this industry. And that's just one example, I think, of many skill sets that are probably coming.
Yeah, that's a great point. And education is like standards, right? It always lags behind. So, the idea of curriculum in even through K through 12 and higher education, preparing more people for that. There still has to be time to build that curriculum and build that skill set. So that's an excellent eye. And the other challenge is an excellent point, Jay. The other challenge is also standards, which we're very much involved in the development of standards and best practices at NIBS, and those always lag behind in innovation. It takes time to get those documented and developed.
But good standards, Johnny, foster innovation because you give people something to point to, and of course that they can use, and of course we're gonna need those in the context of AI but really in the context of just improving the built environment. So they're complementary, I believe.
I'll take a stab at this comparison too. If we go to the circus and we dump 100 animals at someone to train, that's going to be very challenging. But if we have a standard that we're going to use lions, elephants, and monkeys, that makes the job of the trainer much easier. So training a model on no standardized data is very challenging and takes a lot more time than structured data.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing that Kimon brought into the presentation we did at Building Innovation is how can you experiment with these different situations and figure out what the answer is, so that a little bit more about how to use all those different inputs and outputs and let the computer, the artificial intelligence optimize things for you. I mean, it also points to where we do need standards or where there are gaps in what we have. So I think that's a great thing. That was one interesting part of our session, I think, were those different examples Kimon shared.
It could actually be a combination. If you have the standards, it's great. It actually creates a great structure. But also with AI, you can mix standardized and structured data with unstructured data. You can say, here's a data set that's all structured. It's coming out of a building, for example, in BIM. Then here's another data set of just unstructured, just narrative text related to this building. Show me a pattern between those two. And we've been doing quite a bit of that kind of testing. And how do you use the standards that are out there, definitely, but if they don't exist, you can start layering non-structured data on top of it and start querying both of them together. And that's pretty fascinating because that's kind of what humans do, right? So if we can replicate that knowledge or the guidance, then we can get there faster.
I think that asks an interesting question, Kimon, which is, we've had a way of developing standards based on what we need to interact with computers, but maybe that's going to change with the ability to use AI to do queries that don't require as much standardization, or to take unstructured data and structure it. So what effect that has on the standards we need, I don't think we will not have a need for standards, but how that might change is an interesting question that AI poses to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to AI helping us develop standards, to write standards. Like here are all these examples. Like help us find the best practice out of all of them. What else would you guys like to? What would you ask the audience? You know, if you're on the elevator ride with them, 20 seconds apiece. What would you ask them to do with this information, or what would you ask them to do the next steps? And Jay, you've already touched on some of that. You know, skill up. There's a place for you in the industry, but just some other thoughts. And I guess I'll flip it back to Kimon. What do you want the audience to do with this information?
They should think that it's approachable, and for anybody, you don't have to be a huge organization to take advantage of it. Obviously, if you're huge, you have the resources to do it. But with these tools, you can be an individual and do some pretty amazing things. And that's going to just accelerate, I think. AI starts to basically democratize access to and use of technology. And that's the way we should think of it, as an individual and as a large organization, and the connection between different size organizations and owners and everything that NIBS is doing.
Yeah. And Roger?
Well, I'm going to boil it down. I mean, to me, you know, if I'm in the elevator, hopefully it's with somebody that is trying to build a building or a bridge or a road or something, and I want to say to them, you know, keep at it. Do this in the best possible way you can, and take advantage of the tools that are out there and the technology that will help to make the outcome even better. So I think AI is one of those, and it should plug in along with the things that we can do today and the things we need to do better in the future.
Yeah, very good. Jay, did you, again, you already answered this one time, but do you have anything you want to add to it?
Maybe just to lead your teams, you know, be the tip of the spear for your team, be a leader. There's always a lack of leadership in some area. Even if you're not in a leadership position, you can step out, try new things, and help your organization move forward through up, down, or sideways leadership. So I would just recommend to take the steps, do the research, put a half hour in here and there, and learn about this stuff.
Yeah, they have a specialization in curiosity, which would certainly help. So we normally have a little bit of a bonus round of questions here, and we are kind of running a little short on time. So I guess we'll imagine the elevator ride back down. So within the same 20 or 30 seconds. What is the most interesting applications of AI to you? And you don't have to limit this to the building industry if you don't want, but the most interesting application of AI that you have seen or you're anticipating coming. Come on, which one is it for you?
Well, in the BIM storms that we do, we collaborate with others outside our industry. And when we started talking about AI, we had other, like ports industry or blockchain or others that are tangential to the building industry, and saying, here's where we can hook into it. That's the part that excites me though. This goes back to the digital twin. You start growing those nodes, and just simple connections can start doing pretty amazing things. And I think that's the momentum that we have to keep going, and the collaboration aspect of it, because you have to be fearless to connect and collaborate, because we're kind of wired to be protective about our knowledge, and opening it up opens up new opportunities immediately.
Yeah. Roger?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things out there, but I guess I'll just highlight something we talked about in our presentation, which is an MEP company that is working on tools to optimize the design of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems in buildings, and helping to improve the layouts and the utilization of equipment in mechanical rooms and above ceiling plenums. Things we can do today with AI are really exciting, and they're out there. So we talked about this company in our presentation. Check it out and realize that there's things you can plug into your process today that you can get advantage from.
Very cool. And Jay, what's the most interesting application of AI to you currently?
To me, it's the ability to start to tap into unstructured data, really, like something Kimon had talked about. I have this actual app on my computer called YouTube Summarized, and there's a couple of these out there, but YouTube Summarized, and basically you just plug in the link of the YouTube video and you ask it to summarize what are the key bullets of this, and you can ask it questions about what's in that YouTube video, etc. So, just imagine it's basically transcribing everything that's happening in the video and then making it a database for you to ask questions about. So think of someone walking through a building, describing, hey, here's what's in this room. There's 3 mechanical units. They're labeled XYZ. You don't even need to draw plans for that information to then be transacted, manipulated, and put into a building management system. So this massive ability to start tapping into unstructured data from audio recordings, video recordings, PDFs, policies. I mean, the sources become endless, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, very much so. Man, this has been a great panel discussion. Just to kind of recap some of the topics. AI is here to assist. It's not here to run somebody off a job. It's here to assist and not to replace jobs. It can certainly be used to bring groups together and non-traditional groups. There's ways of connecting different groups that may not have worked together before. And one of the things I'm excited about, Jay, you touched on this, is like, hey, if you're an expert in this, the building industry, the construction industry needs you. It really does open up the opportunity to attract a whole new generation of talent that maybe past years we're not able to attract. So take the time to lead your team was another highlight. Learn about AI, begin to use it. Use it to organize unstructured data. Begin to harness that data so that it can be used for something else. Thank you for tuning in to the Building Innovation podcast today. I want to thank our guests, Jay Kline, Kimon Onuma, and Roger Grant, for joining us and sharing their insight and expertise on the topic of AI and building sciences. Jay, Kimon, and Roger also presented this information at Building Innovation 2023. You can find this presentation on our website at buildinginnovation.org under the 2023 schedule with the title, The Intersection of AI and Building Sciences, A New Era of Intelligent Infrastructure. They also held a follow-up webinar in January of 2024 under the same name, The Intersection of AI and Building Sciences. And you can find that on our website at nibs.org/events. And look for the Building Innovation webinar series, which features follow-up sessions from our annual conference. Remember, you can subscribe to Building Innovation, the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to check out the NIBS YouTube channel for more great content. If you enjoyed this episode, then please like it and share it. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to Building Innovation, the podcast, the official podcast of the National Institute of Building Sciences. For more information, visit our website at nibs.org.